Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Maroney, for coming to testify today. I appreciate your opening statement on your efforts to help, reconfigure and reconcile property. I think it's so crucial that we really investigate how these taxpayer dollars are being spent, identify those government inefficiencies, and make sure our dollars are going as far as they possibly can. I've introduced legislation to try to move some of those agencies where they make sense out of Washington, D.C., closer to the people, in a bipartisan manner, I might add. This clearly, to your last line of questioning, reducing the federal government's footprint is a priority across the aisle, and I think that's really important in the conversations that we're having here. Right-sizing the government's holdings will have a substantial impact for American taxpayers, and I hope that the hearing today will help us to better understand how Congress can be a good partner there in making that happen. In March, obviously, we noticed the GSA deferred maintenance backlog exceeded $17 billion. Obviously, taxpayers have to foot that bill at some point, and one clear way is, of course, through the sale of properties. So can you walk us through the process of how that happens for these agencies? We talk about the data that they have already. What is the process to go through selling these properties? And then what is the process to make it easy for interested parties to purchase said properties as well from the federal government?
Sure. So there's many steps, but basically three tranches of what happens when you identify a property for disposal. First, the agency that has the property says, we don't need it. It's excess. And then GSA, in that first step, will check with all the other federal agencies and see, does anyone else want to take this on?
So kind of a first right of refusal within the federal government.
Exactly.
Okay.
Second round, go to states, localities, and certain nonprofit organizations for some specific public purposes and say, does anyone out there want this building? That's typically a 30-day process, and that can either result in a sale to one of those entities or potentially basically a donation at zero value. It depends on the purpose. So that's the next round. Is there a state, locality, or other public use for this building beyond the federal government? If no one's there, so that's the second step. Third step, so neither the federal agencies nor the state locals want it, then it can go up for public sale by competitive means. That can be via an auction, either physical auction or an online auction, or via sealed bids. GSA announces those properties on its website. You can go right now and see everything from a lighthouse that's for sale to commercial office space. And then that process is followed through until the building is sold.
Okay. And how long does that typically take?
That can take a long time,
Okay.
1 to 5 years.
Okay. So would you consider that a barrier to sale, right? I mean, do we need to speed that process up? Is there a way to speed that process up?
So I think one thing that Congress could do is take a look at those steps I described here, see if there should be more flexibilities in pursuing those steps. Certainly, there is a fair amount of red tape that is involved in the process. There are also environmental historical preservation reviews that are part of that too by law that can take time. So again, it's not a one-size-fits-all for all these buildings because it's a huge range. I mean, this is everything, again, from lighthouses and houses, literal houses that are being sold to big office buildings, looking at are there efficiencies to be gained there.
Do you think you talk about all the studies that have to happen in, environmental reviews. Is there duplicative, are there duplicative things happening in that space that you think we could simplify? Or again, you talk about flexibilities there, reduce some of those regulations. Have they been looked at recently to see if they're even still needed or relevant?
So I would say I'm not aware of duplication where there's something straight up, you're doing something twice. Typically what happens is it depends on what the property is. So for instance, the environmental study might not take long unless you find an issue, and then it might take a very long time. Similarly, a building may not be historic, in which case that is not going to take a long time, whereas if it is, that can add a lot of time. So I don't think we have not done a recent study of those disposal processes, but I can say that it has been a challenge in the past, and it continues to be a challenge to get these buildings off the books.
Yeah. What would you say, given the feedback you've gotten over the years, is the biggest complaint that you get in this process from people who are buying property?
Right. That it's slow and bureaucratic.
Okay. Thank you. I yield back.